Ryan's office revenge.
They announced Bryce Coleman's promotion during the Thursday morning all-hands meeting at 9:47 a.m., Director of Strategic Risk Analytics, effective immediately, with a compensation package that included $195,000 base salary, a $120,000 increase from his current analyst position. The conference room erupted in applause. I clapped along with everyone else, maintaining the same neutral expression I'd perfected over 12 years of watching less qualified people climb past me. What they didn't announce was my compensation adjustment that came later, delivered privately by Stephanie Rivers, our VP of Human Resources, in a hastily scheduled 3:15 p.m. meeting that lasted exactly 11 minutes. "Roger, we want you to know how much Summit Analytics Corporation values your contributions," Stephanie said, sliding a single-page document across her desk. "Your mentorship of Bryce has been invaluable to his development and to our organization's success. We're pleased to offer you a loyalty recognition bonus of $15,000 payable over the next 6 months." I read the document twice. $15,000 spread over 6 months. About $2,500 per month before taxes for 12 years of training the person who just received a $120,000 raise. "This is a one-time recognition payment," I said, keeping my voice level, "not a salary adjustment." "That's correct. We feel this appropriately recognizes your mentorship contributions while maintaining our compensation structure integrity." I signed the acknowledgement form. Stephanie seemed pleased that I hadn't argued. She had no way of knowing that I'd stopped arguing with Summit Analytics Corporation about 8 months ago, when I realized that competence and loyalty were liabilities in their promotion calculus, not assets. My name is Roger Hartwell. I'm 47 years old, and I just watched the junior analyst I trained from day one leapfrog me into a director position while I received what amounts to a $1,250 monthly tip for 12 years of work. Look, I've got 2 kids in college and a mortgage that's been eating me alive since Rachel and I bought our house in 2018. At my age, you start thinking about retirement planning, health insurance premiums, and whether you'll ever make enough to actually stop working. You know what hit me? I'd been subsidizing this company's success while they treated me like I was lucky to have a job. Before I explain what happened next, let me tell you exactly what those 12 years looked like. I joined Summit Analytics in January 2012 as a senior risk analyst with a specialty in quantitative financial modeling and derivatives exposure assessment. The firm was mid-sized then, about 180 employees, focused primarily on providing risk analytics to regional banks and credit unions. My role was building predictive models that helped financial institutions understand their exposure to various market scenarios. Bottom line, I made banks money by telling them how not to lose it. Bryce Coleman joined in August 2012 as a junior analyst, fresh from a state university with a degree in economics and exactly 0 practical experience in risk modeling. He was 22 years old, eager and completely overwhelmed by the technical requirements of the position. Get this. His first day, he asked me what Monte Carlo meant. I thought he was joking. His first assignment was assisting me with a credit risk assessment model for a $340 million commercial loan portfolio. I spent 6 weeks teaching him the fundamentals, how to structure probability of default calculations, how to calibrate loss given default assumptions, how to build Monte Carlo simulations for tail risk scenarios. It was like teaching calculus to someone who struggled with fractions. He struggled initially, confusing basic statistical concepts and making errors that would have gotten him terminated if anyone else had been reviewing his work. I covered for him, corrected his mistakes before they reached client deliverables, walked him through every calculation until he understood not just the mechanics but the reasoning, spent evenings after regular work hours explaining quantitative concepts that should have been prerequisites for the position. My wife Rachel used to joke that I had 3 kids, our 2 actual children and Bryce. By month 4, Bryce was functional. By month 8, he was competent. By year 2, he was genuinely good at the technical work. I had essentially provided him with a graduate-level education in risk analytics while maintaining my own client deliverables and project responsibilities. You want to talk about unpaid overtime? I was running a one-man university after hours. During those 12 years, I trained Bryce on 78 distinct client engagements. I taught him how to build financial models that Summit eventually sold as proprietary methodology to clients. I brought him into strategy meetings with C-suite executives at Fortune 500 companies and coached him beforehand on how to present technical findings to non-technical audiences. Introduced him to industry contacts that became his professional network. Every connection he had, every skill he possessed, every piece of knowledge that made him valuable, I gave him that. When Summit won the contract with Pinnacle Banking Group in 2016, a $3.1 million engagement that became our largest client relationship, I'd built the initial risk framework that secured the deal. Bryce had assisted, but the core methodology was mine. By 2019, when that contract renewed at $5.2 million annually, Bryce was presenting the updated models to Pinnacle's board using frameworks I taught him to build. Here's the thing that really burned me. I never received credit in those board presentations. My name appeared in the project documentation, buried in the technical appendix as Senior Risk Analyst, Model Development. Bryce's name appeared on the presentation slides as Lead Analyst, Strategic Risk Assessment. The pattern was consistent and it was killing me financially. I built the intellectual property. Bryce delivered it to clients with the confidence and polish I'd coached him to develop. Executives saw Bryce in client meetings, saw his presentation skills, assumed he was the primary driver of the analytics. Meanwhile, I'm sitting at home trying to figure out how to pay for my daughter's sophomore year at State while watching my protege get all the recognition. By 2020, Summit had grown to 340 employees. Bryce had been promoted to Senior Analyst, a lateral move to my position despite having 7 years less experience. His salary had increased to $98,000. Mine had increased to $102,000, a $4,000 difference for someone with 7 additional years of expertise in every significant client relationship in our division. $4,000. That's what they valued 7 years of experience at. I was making barely enough to cover my daughter's tuition while training someone who was making almost as much as me. I raised this disparity with Stephanie in my 2020 performance review. Her response was diplomatic but clear. Roger, you're incredibly valuable as a technical specialist, but Bryce has demonstrated client-facing skills and strategic thinking that align with our growth trajectory. We need different types of talent for different roles. You know what that meant? Bryce was better at corporate politics and executive visibility. I was better at actual risk analytics. Summit valued the former more than the latter. They wanted the show horse, not the workhorse. I stopped pushing for promotions after that conversation. Instead, I focused on documenting everything. Every model I built, every methodology I developed, every client relationship I maintained, every hour I spent training Bryce and the 8 other junior analysts who'd rotated through our division. Call it insurance. I understood something that Stephanie and the rest of Summit's executive team apparently didn't. Institutional knowledge is only valuable when the institution can retain it. Listen. At 47, you start thinking differently about your career. You realize you've probably got maybe 15 good years left before companies start looking at you like you're outdated technology. My son was starting his junior year, my daughter was talking about grad school, and Rachel was dealing with her mom's health issues that meant more medical bills. I needed this job to work for me, not against me. The emergency client call happened Friday morning at 6:18 a.m. Pinnacle Banking Group's Chief Risk Officer, Tyler Anderson, had discovered a significant discrepancy in their capital adequacy projections. The models we delivered were showing stress test results that conflicted with their internal calculations by approximately $140 million in required reserve capital. Bryce called me at 6:22 a.m., voice tight with panic. Roger, I need you on this call. Tyler is asking technical questions about the Monte Carlo calibration methodology, and I can't explain the underlying assumptions. He's threatening to terminate the contract. I was already awake, drinking coffee in my kitchen, reading the Wall Street Journal on my tablet. Rachel was still asleep upstairs. At my age, you don't sleep in anymore. Too much on your mind. I let the phone ring 4 times before answering. What specifically is he asking about? The correlation matrices for the commercial real estate portfolio. He's saying our default assumptions are too conservative, and he wants to know why we used rank correlation instead of Pearson correlation for the dependencies. I don't know how to explain that. I knew exactly how to explain it because I'd built that methodology in 2017 and spent 3 weeks teaching Bryce the statistical reasoning behind using rank correlation for non-normal distributions. He'd apparently forgotten. Funny how selective memory works when you're making $195,000. I'll be on the call, I said. Send me the meeting link. At 6:28 a.m., I joined the video conference. 16 people from Pinnacle's risk management team. Bryce looking exhausted and stressed, Tyler Anderson looking angry. "Roger, thank God," Bryce said when my video connected. "Tyler has some technical questions about the model calibration." Tyler didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Mr. Hartwell, your models are showing we need $140 million more in reserve capital than our internal models indicate. Before we discuss terminating this contract, I need to understand why your correlation assumptions are driving such different results." I opened my laptop, pulled up the model documentation, began walking Tyler through the technical reasoning for every calibration choice, every statistical assumption, every methodological decision. 28 minutes of explaining quantitative concepts to a room full of executives and risk managers. Same thing I'd done hundreds of times before. Halfway through, something hit me. Here I was again, doing exactly what I'd done for 12 years, solving problems that Bryce couldn't solve, maintaining client relationships that Bryce couldn't maintain, providing expertise that Summit claimed to value at $15,000, while paying Bryce $195,000 to take credit for it. You want to know what really got to me? I was sitting there at 6:30 in the morning, probably missing my son's early basketball practice that I'd promised to attend, explaining work that I'd built to save a contract for a company that just told me I was worth a $15,000 tip. Meanwhile, Bryce, who couldn't answer a single technical question without me, was making enough money to send his kids to private school. At 6:57 a.m., while explaining the rank correlation methodology for the third time to a Pinnacle vice president who still didn't understand the statistical concepts, I made a decision that changed everything. I stopped talking mid-sentence, closed my laptop, looked directly into the camera. "Tyler, I apologize, but I need to step away from this call. Bryce can address your remaining questions." The conference room went silent. Bryce's face went white. "Roger, wait." I disconnected from the call, shut down my laptop, walked upstairs to my bedroom where Rachel was getting ready for work. "You're home early," she said, confused. "I thought you had that emergency Pinnacle call." "I did. I left." "You left in the middle of the call?" "In the middle of explaining something that Bryce should be able to explain himself if he's worth $195,000 as Director of Strategic Risk Analytics." Rachel sat down on the bed, watching me carefully. She'd seen me frustrated before, but this was different. "What are you doing, Roger?" "Something I should have done months ago. I'm not covering for him anymore." If Bryce can't answer Pinnacle's technical questions, that's Summit's problem, not mine. I'm 47 years old, Rachel. I've got maybe 15 years left in this career, and I'm not spending them being undervalued while I train my replacement. At 7:30 a.m., my phone started ringing. Bryce declined the call. At 7:35 a.m., text message from Bryce. "Roger, please call me back. Tyler is asking questions I can't answer, and he's threatening to pull the contract." I didn't respond. You know what? Let him sweat it out. For 12 years, I'd been his safety net. Time to see how well he could fly solo. At 7:42 a.m., another call. Stephanie Rivers. I declined. At 7:44 a.m., voicemail notification. I didn't listen to it. By 7:50 a.m., I'd received 14 calls and 22 text messages from various people at Summit. I turned my phone to airplane mode and went for a run. Rachel was watching me with this look, part concern, part curiosity. "You're really doing this?" "I'm really doing this. Look, they can't have it both ways. Either I'm valuable enough to pay me appropriately and promote me based on my actual contributions, or I'm just a technical specialist who they can compensate with a $15,000 tip while promoting the person I trained into a director position." They chose the latter. Now they get to see what that choice costs. Let me tell you what was happening at Summit while I was running through my neighborhood thinking about how I'd spent 12 years building someone else's career. Bryce couldn't answer Pinnacle's technical questions. He tried to deflect, to schedule a follow-up call, to promise detailed written responses. Tyler Anderson wasn't accepting deflections. He wanted answers immediately, or he was terminating the $5.2 million annual contract. Without me on the call, Bryce had no answers. He tried to explain the correlation methodology and got the statistical reasoning wrong. He tried to defend the calibration assumptions and contradicted the model documentation. The guy was drowning, and for the first time in 12 years, I wasn't throwing him a life preserver. By 8:15 a.m., Tyler had ended the call and emailed Summit's CEO, Nathan Burke, formally notifying him that Pinnacle was suspending all ongoing work pending a comprehensive review of Summit's analytical capabilities. You want to know how fast things move when you're about to lose a $5.2 million contract? Real fast. By 8:50 a.m., Nathan had called an emergency executive meeting. By 9:35 a.m., they determined they needed me on a call with Pinnacle to salvage the relationship. By 9:42 a.m., Stephanie was calling me again. I was home from my run by then, drinking water in my kitchen, phone still in airplane mode. Rachel was getting ready to leave for her job at the marketing firm. She's always been the practical one in our marriage. "What's your end game here?" she asked. Honestly, I don't know yet, but I know what it's not. It's not me bailing them out again while they pay me like I'm lucky to have a job. I'm 47, Rachel. If I don't stand up for myself now, when will I? At 10 a.m., I turned my phone back on. 47 missed calls, 63 text messages, 12 voicemails. I listened to the most recent voicemail from Nathan Burke himself. "Roger, this is Nathan. I understand you had to step away from the Pinnacle call this morning. I need you to call me immediately. We have a situation that requires your expertise, and I want to discuss how we can resolve this together. Please call me as soon as you get this message." I deleted the voicemail, didn't call back. You know why? Because for the first time in my career, I had leverage and I wasn't going to waste it. At 10:47 a.m., someone knocked on my front door. I looked through the window. Stephanie Rivers standing on my porch in business attire, looking stressed. She actually drove to my house. That told me everything I needed to know about how badly they were panicking. I opened the door but didn't invite her inside. "Stephanie, Roger, we need to talk. Can I come in? I'd prefer to keep this conversation brief. What do you need?" She took a breath, clearly frustrated at being kept on the porch like a door-to-door salesman. "Nathan needs you to join a call with Tyler Anderson at 2 p.m. today. Pinnacle is threatening to terminate the contract unless we can provide satisfactory answers to their technical questions." Bryce couldn't address their concerns this morning. Bryce wasn't able to address their concerns this morning. That's unfortunate. Bryce is the director of strategic risk analytics. Surely he should be capable of addressing technical questions about models he's been presenting to Pinnacle for the past 3 years. "Roger, we both know you built those models. You have the technical expertise that we need on this call. Then perhaps Summit should have considered that before promoting Bryce to director and offering me a $15,000 loyalty bonus." Stephanie's expression hardened. "This isn't about your compensation. This is about a $5.2 million client relationship that's in jeopardy." "No, Stephanie, this is exactly about my compensation. It's about Summit deciding that 12 years of building the intellectual property that generates $5.2 million in annual revenue is worth $15,000. While the person who learned everything from me gets $195,000 to present my work. You made that decision. Now you get to live with the consequences. Get this, she actually tried to threaten me. Are you refusing to participate in client calls? Because that could be considered insubordination. I'm not refusing anything. I'm simply unavailable for the 2 p.m. call. I have personal matters to attend to." "What personal matters? That's private. If Summit needs technical expertise to maintain the Pinnacle relationship, I suggest asking your director of strategic risk analytics. That's why you're paying him $195,000, isn't it? For his strategic risk analytics expertise." I closed the door before she could respond. Rachel had been listening from the kitchen. She came over and put her hand on my shoulder. "You just burned that bridge pretty thoroughly." "Good. It was a bridge to nowhere anyway. The 2 p.m. call with Pinnacle happened without me. I know this because Nathan sent me an email at 2:47 p.m. describing it as a difficult conversation that would have benefited from your technical input. Bottom line, it was a disaster. What I learned later through a former colleague who still worked at Summit was that Bryce had attempted to answer Tyler's questions again, gotten the methodology wrong again, and Tyler had ended the call after 31 minutes. Pinnacle formally terminated their contract at 3:15 p.m. that afternoon. $5.2 million in annual revenue. Gone. By 4 p.m., I received an email from Nathan requesting a meeting Monday morning at 8 a.m. to discuss my career trajectory and compensation at Summit Analytics. I didn't respond to that email either. Here's what I did instead. Over the weekend, I contacted 7 former colleagues who'd left Summit over the past 4 years for competitor firms. You know what's great about being 47 in this industry? You've got a network. I asked each of them the same question. Would their current employer be interested in someone with my background and expertise? 6 of them said yes immediately. The 7th said their firm wasn't currently hiring but would create a position if I was interested. When you've been around as long as I have, people know your reputation. By Monday morning at 7 a.m., I had 3 formal interview requests. By Monday afternoon, I had 2 preliminary compensation discussions that both started above $145,000 base salary with significantly better bonus structures than Summit had ever offered. I showed up to Nathan's 8 a.m. meeting exactly on time. He was waiting in the large conference room with Stephanie and Scott Phillips, Summit's chief operating officer. The presence of the COO told me they understood how serious this was. "Roger, thank you for coming," Nathan began. "I want to start by saying we value your contributions to Summit, and we recognize there may have been some miscommunication about your role and compensation." I sat down but said nothing. Let them do the talking. At my age, you learn when to speak and when to listen. "The situation with Pinnacle was unfortunate," Nathan continued. "We've lost a significant client relationship, and, in retrospect, we should have better supported Bryce with technical expertise during that call." "Bryce is your director of strategic risk analytics," I said. "Why would he need my support?" The 3 of them exchanged glances. Scott spoke up. "Roger, we all know that you've been instrumental in developing our risk analytics methodology. Your technical expertise is unique within our organization. Bryce has strong client management skills and strategic vision, but he benefits from collaboration with someone of your technical depth. So you're saying Bryce can't actually do the job you promoted him into without my assistance?" Stephanie tried a different approach. "We want to discuss a compensation adjustment that better reflects your value to the organization. We're prepared to offer you a salary increase to $140,000 effective immediately, along with an expanded bonus structure tied to division performance. $140,000. A $38,000 raise. Still $55,000 less than Bryce's new salary, for someone who actually built the models that Bryce presented." "That's generous," I said. "What would my title be?" "You'd remain a senior risk analyst, but with enhanced responsibilities and recognition of your technical leadership role. So I'd be making $140,000 as a senior analyst, while Bryce makes $195,000 as director, despite the fact that I built the methodologies he can't explain." "I appreciate the offer," I said, standing up, "but I'm going to decline." "Roger, please reconsider," Stephanie said quickly. "Here's the thing," I said. "I'm 47 years old. I've learned that you can't teach an organization to value what it doesn't already understand. You systematically undervalued the person who generated your intellectual property while promoting the person who commodified it. That's not a sustainable business model, and it's not a place I want to spend my remaining career years." I walked to the door, then turned back. "One more thing. I trained Bryce everything he knows about risk analytics. I built the models. I developed the methodologies. I maintained the client relationships. And you paid me $15,000 to mentor him into a position paying $55,000 more than mine. If you want to understand why you lost Pinnacle, that's your answer." By Wednesday, I had 3 formal job offers. The best one came from Apex Strategic Solutions. They wanted someone who could build risk analytics frameworks for financial institutions, someone who knew the market, understood the technical requirements, and had relationships with potential clients. I accepted their offer, $175,000 base salary, performance bonus structure capped at 40% of base, full benefits, and a signing bonus of $30,000. Most importantly, they valued what I actually did, not just how well I presented it. Here's what happened next. Without my technical expertise, Bryce couldn't rebuild the Pinnacle relationship. Tyler Anderson refused to engage. Pinnacle moved their risk analytics contract to Apex Strategic Solutions about 4 weeks after I joined. I didn't pitch Pinnacle. Tyler called me directly and asked if Apex could provide the same level of technical sophistication that I'd previously delivered at Summit. 3 weeks later, Apex had a $5.8 million contract with Pinnacle Banking Group, $600,000 more than Summit had been charging them. Over the next 6 months, 4 other major clients reduced their contracts with Summit or terminated them entirely. Summit's revenue dropped by approximately $8.1 million in the first year after I left. 18 months after joining Apex, I was promoted to Senior Director of Risk Analytics with a salary of $225,000. 2 years after that, I became Vice President of Quantitative Solutions at $280,000 plus equity. Bryce lasted 13 months at Summit after I left. He was demoted back to Senior Analyst at $115,000, then resigned 4 months later. Last I heard, he was working for a regional consulting firm making about $95,000. You know what I learned from all this? At our age, we can't afford to wait for companies to recognize our value. We have to create situations where our value becomes undeniable. Sometimes that means walking away from what feels safe to find what actually is. My kids are both graduated now, the mortgage is manageable, and Rachel and I are actually talking about early retirement. Funny how much easier life gets when you stop accepting less than you're worth. The best revenge isn't making people regret what they did to you. It's building something better and making them wonder what they could have been part of if they'd been smarter. In your career, you'll face moments when staying comfortable costs more than taking a risk. And at 47, I finally learned that loyalty without reciprocity is just another word for exploitation. The most dangerous mistake you can make is believing that being indispensable makes you valuable to people who've already decided you're replaceable.